Hey, Shalom Akim, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem HaKadosh Barakatam. Double honors and salutations to the elders and apostle, Grammys John Real Well, Spirit of Nasha, DC Camp. Short lesson for the hopeful elect. This agenda of Trump being in office is a realization of the elites, looking forward to cementing their power, their dominance over the people, and they need to have the perfect candidate, the perfect operator to muster the people, to rally the people to their agenda, by means of deception, browbeating and pride and arrogance. That's what this administration of Trump has become to the people. See the reason why there's protests across the nation when you see the response to this immigration enforcement. You begin to wonder why this moment. You have national guards on the streets, just walking around, doing landscaping work and all that stuff, losing their lives, getting exposed to all these people with mental illness, So, at the end of the day, man, they turn the country into a powder keg, turn it into a laboratory of chaos, and that's Babylon for you, chaos, 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 all right? So, let me play the clip and get some scriptures just to go along.
Professor Timothy Snyder's new article in the Boston Globe is titled, "The Political Logic of Trump's Violent Lawlessness." Professor Snyder writes, "The moral horror wrought by President Trump's second administration is incontrovertible. The aspiring tyrant looks for cracks in the system that can be pried open. One of these cracks is the border, where the country ends, because the law ends there too. An obvious move for the tyrant is to turn the whole country into a border where no rules apply. Soviet leader Joseph Stalin did this in the 1930s.
But that's what the elites have always wanted, man. They always wanted to get rid of the Constitution, so they have to engineer a political atmosphere to bring about the fracturing of the American institution. The economic system is fractured, the legislative system is fractured, the executive system is fractured, the judiciary system is fractured. It's infested with with the E-class, and that's the reason why the folks don't have any regard for these so-called public servants anymore, man. They've seen the shenanigans, they've seen the insider trading, they've seen the corruption, they've seen the bribery, they've seen the scandals, and folks just get turned off, man. And then they just don't want anything to do with this administration. They want the people the so-called politicians to go away, but they just don't want to leave those positions of influence because it's a cash grab, it's a money, it's a money tree. The so-called public, what we call the government sector. It's a money tree for these stooges of the elites.
With border zones and deportations preceding the Great Terror. Adolf Hitler did it too in 1938 Germany with immigration raids that targeted undocumented Jews and forced them to flee the country. Trump, by his own admission and that of his cabinet members, is following the same playbook. The border becomes the pretext to undo the law everywhere, at all times, against everyone. It is the crack.
Yeah, but the person, giving the analysis is not gonna say exactly how this lobby of Israelis, man, employing the same tactics. So that's why it's always important to watch these op-eds, opinion editorials with a grain of salt. You have folks losing their credentials because they criticize the E-class, and they become blacklisted and all that stuff. So it's just part of the journey. You have judges that can't do their jobs normally anymore because the government is using the agenda of the E-class to debank them. Money's all tied up in the system. They've taken over the laurels of power. The so-called national security apparatus is in the hands of the insane. It's in the hands of the so-called tyrants, the tyrants club. One man cannot run the show without the support of his team. So that's exactly what you have to see.
That can be opened. Joining us now is Timothy Snyder, professor of history at the University of Toronto. He's the author of the New York Times bestsellers on freedom and on tyranny. Professor.
Yeah, so freedom and tyranny, man, that's two things. It's like oil and water; they can't mix. Isaiah chapter 19 and 4, it says, "And the Egyptians will I give over into the hand of a cruel Lord, and a fierce king shall rule over them, said the Lord of hosts." All right, so yeah, people are upset, and Edomites are living in cars. The so-called bills for utilities more than what they pay in rent. So it's a mess. It's a mess. That's the reason why, the Lord has to get us out of Babylon, man. This chaos is a dangerous exposure, man. It affects your psyche, and you have to pray on a daily basis, man, that your mind doesn't snap, because it's a constant barrage of chaos. That's why the situation in Jake's just forced themselves to come across the border just to make life for themselves is becoming a challenge. People just languishing in detention centers, or because they want something better for their lives. But this is not a place for arrest. The book of Jeremiah 42 and 17 says, "So shall it be with all the men that set their faces to go into Egypt to sojourn there. They shall die by the sword, by the famine, and by the pestilence, and none of them shall remain or escape from the evil that I will bring upon them." Yeah, so that's the reason why, our people have to start, rethinking their agenda, to set up roots, set down roots here in Babylon. They want to be a part of the American experience. The Lord says, not going to happen. So that's a recipe for disaster that the Lord wants us to let go of, man. So many people are tied up, they're tied into the system, and they'd be surprised how they're just going to accept the MOTB when the MOTB comes out. So we just gotta pray that we overcome, this attack on our mental state, man. The stability of your mind is a very very important commodity to guard. Scripture talks about guarding your heart, your mind, your thoughts with all diligence. You don't want this corruption to swallow you up just like just like venom. So you gotta be aware of what you're in the midst of, man. Do not get let me see swallowed up by the flood. All right, by the flood of Esau's system. That's why we need mercy from the Lord of Mashiach Yahushua to get out of this. So another precept I'll need to bring out will be from the book of Jeremiah chapter 30 and 11. It says, "For I am with thee, saith the Lord, to save thee. Though I make a full end of all the nations, whither I have scattered thee, yet will I not make a full end of thee." So there's always going to be a remnant. All right, but I will correct thee in measure, and will not leave thee altogether unpunished. So that is the way of the Lord, being made known to our people, man. We're gonna have to deal with the chastening of the Lord. The exposure to famine, exposure to violence, exposure to plagues and all that stuff. It's just part of the process of getting prepared for our salvation. We have to deal with, the bitterness of Esau's world. All right.
Mr. Snyder, I'd like to begin with as the first question with really the title of your piece. What is the political logic of Trump's violent lawlessness?
In order to build tyranny, you have to open zones where the law doesn't apply and where the citizens will accept that the law doesn't apply. One zone like that is a concentration camp. Another zone like that is the border. The logic of what they've been doing with ICE is to take the border everywhere, to take border enforcement everywhere, to take the violence associated with border enforcement everywhere, to try to get the citizenry used to the idea that anywhere in America, at any time, there can be a zone of exception where anything is possible. That's the logic.
You write in your piece that the way the administration uses the word terrorist and extremist is very important to the way they're carrying this out, and we saw them use that word instantaneously.
Yeah, so that's one thing. That's what you call wordsmithing, and they also have to use auto care, all strategies just to hammer their point into the minds of the people, the minds of the gullible, so when people are ignorant and they're just willing to toe the line, get along so they could get a crumble off the table of the elites. This is the type of propaganda talking points that the administration will put out there. All right. So you have to know exactly what's happening in the kingdom that the Most High has allowed you to be present. So the book of Matthew chapter 11 and 12 says, and from the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven suffereth violence, and the violent take it by force. So that's Esau's kingdom, man. Yes, America, Esau's kingdom. but he has to come against the kingdom of Israel. So he has to come against so-called Negroes, so-called Latinos, so-called Native Americans, man. And from the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven suffered violence. So our people have to deal with the the demise of their family members, man. Their dreams being shattered. Being held in a facility beyond a reasonable duration. So under unsanitary conditions, it's like being on slave ships again. So that's the pain you have to deal with. And then it says what? And the violent take it by force. So Esau is that man of violence. The man of violence that is upon the face of the earth. You have to be aware that you have to be circumspect as you move through this society, man. It's rough. It's rough. Yeah, so I got another precept. It's gonna be from the book of. I just make it simple. Yeah, it's gonna be from the book of Proverbs. Let's see. Yeah, Proverbs chapter 10 and 11. The mouth of a righteous man is a well of life, but violence covered the mouths of the wicked. And that's what Esau has to apply on a regular basis. Violence, violence, violence. Right? Proverbs chapter 10 and 11. The mouth of a righteous man is a well of life. So that means there's always something that sustains you when you are around the righteous. It's always a day of refreshing, a day of upliftment, a day of reflection, a day of correction, a day of, let's say a day of mercy. You know, that's how it is. But it says, but violence covered the mouth of the wicked. So it's always chaos. And that's what Esau's society is, man. The mouthpieces of his society are just bringing all types of instability. Instability in Esau's kingdom is fuel for violence. It's a fuel for disaster. It's a fuel for mental breakdown, and that's what we see on a large scale.
After Alex Preddy was murdered.
Yeah, I mean, before I answer that politically, I just can't help but say that it's fundamentally indecent to speak that way of the dead. It's just fundamentally indecent. I mean, there's just a basic violation of everything. I mean, before we can get to America and the Constitution and politics, regardless of any circumstance, you simply don't speak of the dead that way. And when it's possible that you might bear responsibility, the first thing you ought to be doing is taking that responsibility. Okay, having said that, this is very familiar. The idea is to deny the victim their humanity, to turn them into a member of an abstract class, to turn that class into a threat, and calling people terrorists or extremists, or as Stephen Miller did in A Complete Lie, assassins. This is what tyrants do. They take away what's special and particular about us and try to turn us into enemies. And what's depressing about this is...
Yeah, and that's how they're able to justify slavery. That's a trick they've always used, when they collaborate with the so-called Catholic Church. This is what you get. So it's just important to know exactly how they start this agenda, so-called white supremacy, they had to use the church as an institution, the so-called Catholic Church, to to solidify their doctrine of discovery. Yep. And when they have their Berlin conference, that's what happens. So you could follow up for the rest of the consequences that are visited upon the people that had no power to overcome their oppressors. So you just have to be cognizant of that fact. So the book of Psalms chapter 124, you know, helps us reflect on the mercy of the Lord. It says, if it had not been the Lord, who was on our side, now may Israel say, Yasharala say, if it had not been the Lord who was on our side, when men rose up against us, then they had swallowed us up quick when their wrath was kindled against us. Then the waters had overwhelmed us. The stream had gone over our soul. The proud waters had gone over our soul. Blessed be the Lord who had not given us as a prey to their teeth. Our soul is escaped as a bird out of the snare of the fowlers. The snare is broken and we are escaped. And that's what we've been praying for, man, that we can escape out of the hands of our enemies. Our help is in the name of the Lord, who made heaven and earth. Yeah, so the horror of Jacob's trouble is just brewing. And when the Lord lifts up that standard, it's going to be a beautiful sign of relief. That we're going to have to embrace, in these last days, man, because a lot of people are just praying, man, praying so hard, for the Lord, to deliver them out of this calamity, out of this nightmare, that's we have to relieve every single day. So end of the day, man, we're looking for the Lord, to comfort us, man, to comfort our souls with His words. So that's the bottom line for this lesson, man. We have to prepare our souls to detach from this society of violence, because violence is just something that's, after a while, man, you have to just separate yourself from, man. You can't continue to just absorb the vibration of chaos. It's not healthy for your soul. There's a time for chaos and there's a time for stability. So when the time of chaos is coming apart, it's falling apart, you know what that means. It's time for peace, to reign upon the earth. That's what we're looking forward, to the Prince of Peace, Hamashiach Yahushai, to return. Shalom.